What kind of woman could terrify an entire nation, silence the prophets of God, manipulate a king, and drag an entire kingdom into spiritual darkness? Her name was Jezebel. For thousands of years, that name has carried a dark reputation. In many cultures, calling someone Jezebel is not a compliment. It represents manipulation, corruption, and rebellion against God. But Jezebel was not born a villain in Israel's story. She was a princess from a powerful foreign kingdom, raised in a world where power was everything and false gods ruled the hearts of the people. And when she entered Israel's royal palace, she didn't just become a queen. She changed the spiritual direction of an entire nation. But before we continue, if you enjoy powerful Bible stories that reveal the rise and fall of kings, prophets, and nations, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story. Now, to understand how Jezebel became one of the most feared women in the Bible, we must begin far from Israel, in the ancient city of Sidon. Sidon was a wealthy Phoenician city along the Mediterranean Sea. It was known for trade, influence, and its deep devotion to the worship of Baal. Baal was believed to be the god of storms, rain, and fertility. The people of Sidon believed their crops, their animals, and even their survival depended on pleasing this god. Jezebel grew up in this environment. Her father was Ethbaal, the king of the Sidonians. But Ethbaal was not only a king, he was also a priest of Baal. That meant religion and political power were completely intertwined in Jezebel's upbringing. From childhood, she watched priests perform rituals to Baal. She saw people bow before idols. She learned that kings had the authority to shape the beliefs of their people. And she learned something else. Power could control nations. Jezebel was intelligent, confident, and strong-willed, but she was also ambitious and ruthless. When she married King Ahab of Israel, it seemed like a simple political alliance between two kingdoms, but that marriage would become one of the most dangerous turning points in Israel's history. Ahab was already known as a wicked king. The Bible says he did more evil in the eyes of the Lord than any king before him. Yet his greatest mistake was not simply his own decisions. It was allowing Jezebel to influence the spiritual direction of Israel. When Jezebel arrived as queen, she did not quietly adapt to Israel's traditions. Instead, she brought her beliefs with her. Soon, temples dedicated to Baal began appearing across the land. Altars were built. Hundreds of priests devoted to Baal were given positions of honor. And slowly, the worship of the true God began to disappear from public life. But Jezebel wanted more than influence. She wanted total control over the spiritual identity of Israel. Anyone who stood against her became an enemy. Across the nation, prophets of the Lord began to disappear. Some were hunted down. Some were imprisoned. Many were executed. Imagine the fear spreading through Israel during that time. Men who had spent their lives speaking God's truth suddenly became fugitives. Families whispered prayers in secret. The voice of God was being silenced by royal authority. Yet even during this dark time, God preserved a faithful remnant. A man named Obadiah secretly hid 100 prophets in 2 caves and risked his own life to bring them food and water. But while many prophets hid, one man would step forward and confront the king directly. His name was Elijah. Elijah suddenly appeared before King Ahab with a message that would challenge everything Jezebel believed. He declared that because Israel had turned to Baal, God would shut the heavens. There would be no rain, no dew, no relief, until God alone decided the drought would end. In a land that believed Baal controlled the storms, this was a direct challenge to Jezebel's God.
Then Elijah vanished. Days passed, weeks passed, months passed. The sky remained silent. Rivers shrank, fields turned brown, crops failed. Hunger spread across the land. Year after year, the drought continued. For 3 long years, the skies over Israel remained closed. People suffered, animals died. The once fertile land turned into dust. And King Ahab blamed Elijah for the disaster. But God was preparing a moment that would expose the truth before the entire nation. Finally, Elijah sent a message to Ahab. It was time for a confrontation. The meeting would take place on Mount Carmel. Word spread quickly across the land, and people gathered to witness what would happen. On one side stood 450 prophets of Baal. They represented the religion Jezebel had forced upon the nation. On the other side stood only one man, Elijah.
He stepped forward and addressed the people. "How long will you waver between 2 opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him." The people said nothing. Fear and confusion filled the crowd. Then Elijah proposed a test. 2 altars would be built, 2 sacrifices prepared, but no fire would be lit. Instead, each side would call upon their God to send fire from heaven. The God who answered with fire would prove that he was real. The prophets of Baal began first. They shouted prayers. They danced around their altar. They cried out to Baal from morning until noon, but nothing happened. The sky remained silent. Elijah began to mock them. "Shout louder," he said. "Maybe your God is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling." The prophets became desperate. They shouted louder. They cut themselves with knives according to their rituals. Blood ran down their arms as they begged Baal to answer, but the heavens remained silent. Hour after hour passed. Still no fire came. As evening approached, Elijah stepped forward. He repaired the broken altar of the Lord using 12 stones representing the tribes of Israel. He arranged the wood. He placed the sacrifice on the altar. Then he did something that made the moment even more impossible. He ordered servants to pour water over the altar. They poured water once, then again, then a 3rd time. Water soaked the sacrifice, the wood, and even filled the trench around the altar. It looked impossible for anything to burn. Then Elijah prayed, "O Lord, answer me so these people will know that you are God and that you are turning their hearts back again." Suddenly fire fell from heaven. It consumed the sacrifice. It burned the wood. It shattered the stones. It even dried the water in the trench. The crowd fell to the ground in shock. "The Lord, He is God! The Lord, He is God!" For a moment, the truth had been revealed before the entire nation. But when news reached Jezebel, she was furious. Her prophets had been defeated, her authority had been challenged, and she wanted revenge. She sent a message to Elijah. "By this time tomorrow, I will make your life like one of them." In other words, Elijah would be dead within 24 hours. Even the prophet who called fire from heaven understood how dangerous Jezebel truly was. He fled into the wilderness. But the queen's cruelty was far from finished. Near the royal palace in Jezreel was a vineyard owned by a man named Naboth. The land had belonged to his family for generations. King Ahab wanted it. He offered to buy it or exchange it for better land, but Naboth refused. The land was part of his family inheritance, something that according to God's law should never be permanently sold. Ahab returned to the palace angry and depressed.
He lay on his bed and refused to eat. When Jezebel saw him, she asked what was wrong. After hearing the story, she mocked him. "Are you not the king of Israel?" To Jezebel, power meant taking whatever you wanted. She decided to solve the problem herself. Jezebel wrote letters in Ahab's name and sealed them with the royal seal. She instructed the leaders of the city to proclaim a public fast and seat Naboth in a place of honor. Then 2 men were to falsely accuse him of cursing God and the king. The plan unfolded exactly as she intended. Naboth was publicly accused. The people believed the lies. The innocent man was dragged outside the city, and there he was stoned to death by the crowd. His only crime was refusing to give up the land of his ancestors. When Naboth was dead, Jezebel told Ahab to take possession of the vineyard. But God had seen everything. Soon Elijah appeared again with a message of judgment. He declared that disaster would fall upon the Ahab dynasty. Then he spoke words that would follow Jezebel for the rest of her life. "Dogs will devour Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel." It was a terrifying prophecy. Years passed. Kings rose and fell, but God's words were not forgotten. Eventually, a military commander named Jehu was chosen to bring judgment upon the house of Ahab. Jehu rode toward the city of Jezreel where Jezebel lived. When the queen heard he was coming, she did something unexpected. Instead of hiding, she prepared herself. She painted her eyes. She arranged her hair. Then she stood proudly at the palace window overlooking the city. Even now, she refused to show fear. When Jehu arrived beneath the palace, she called down to him with mocking words. But Jehu did not answer. Instead, he looked up and shouted, "Who is on my side?" Several palace officials looked down from the window. Jehu gave a single command: "Throw her down." Without hesitation, they pushed Jezebel from the window. She fell to the ground below. Her blood splattered against the wall and the horses. Jehu rode his chariot over her body and entered the city. Later, when servants went to bury the once powerful queen, they found almost nothing left. Only her skull, her feet, and the palms of her hands remained. Wild dogs had devoured the rest, exactly as Elijah had prophesied years earlier. The woman who once ruled with fear was gone. No royal monument marked her grave. No legacy of honor remained. Only a chilling reminder of what happens when power is used to fight against God. Jezebel had wealth. She had influence. She had authority over a kingdom. But she used that power to silence truth, persecute God's people, and lead a nation into corruption. And in the end, the queen who believed she was untouchable discovered a truth that echoes through history. No matter how powerful someone becomes, no one can stand against God forever. If this story moved you and you want to hear more powerful Bible stories like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the next video. And tell me in the comments, do you think Jezebel was the most evil woman in the Bible, or simply one of the most dangerous rulers in history?